In our last video, we developed our roofs and our slabs, or our floor structures, for all three constructs, for the basement, for the main level, and for the upper level. What we're going to do in this video now is we're going to go ahead and develop our site. Now, our site is something that was part of the package that we had in terms of our markups. So here, what we can see is our site is in Sandy Estates, City of Houston, County of Harris, State of Texas. We may adjust that later on. But the property that we're going to be looking at is this one down here on a street called Mibrata Loop. Let's go ahead and let's see if we can get a little bit more zoom in on here. So here are the bearings for the piece of property. If you remember from this one, we have got, actually the road is on the north side. If we go back to our plans, we notice that the garage and so on would be facing south. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to turn the world around, and we're going to have north facing south so that we can have our garage facing towards Mibrata Loop. So what we're going to do is, rather than turn the house around, we are going to go ahead and turn the property around. Now that's kind of important because what we want is the floor plans to stay exactly where they are. Remember, we've taken great care in aligning them vertically and aligning them horizontally so that when they get stacked together in an assembly, that they will be in the right location. In addition, typically when you're doing residential, your front door or garage is going to be pointing down or to the right. So what we're going to do is we are going to play God, and we're going to be turning the north from pointing straight up typically to pointing straight down. I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way right now. I'm going to put it onto my second screen. As I had mentioned previously, I'm working with two screens. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to my project navigator, go to the constructs, and I'm going to go to site. Now nothing has been drawn on this, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead using the site plan and the survey that was given to us with the adjustments and the changes, and we're going to go ahead and draw the site right here. We're also going to be moving that over to where our other constructs are located. We're going to do that after we begin to lay this out. So the first thing we got to do is we got to understand that if you look at your user interface, and we've got our view cube here, north is pointing straight up. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and lay out our bearings based on the fact that north is going straight up, and then we're going to go ahead and rotate it to fit to what our condition is. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through our layers in here, and if you notice, we do not have the full layers here. So I'm going to do the same thing that we did previously for some of our other constructs, and I'm going to type ADC for Design Center, and let's wait for that to pop up. And then what we can do is let's go ahead and let's look at the open drawings that we have. Let's go ahead and we can grab any one of these. We could grab the main, we could grab the model, we can grab the site is the one that we're going to be dragging it into. So let's go ahead and let's just do the main. We're going to go down to the layers. We're going to highlight each one of the layers like we did previously. Control Shift. We're going to go ahead and drag that right onto our drawing area. So once we've done that, we can close it up, and if we now take a look at our layers in here, you can see that we've got all our layers located in here. The one that we're really going to want to start with is a prop for a property, and that has already been set up. So if we go to our layer manager and we take a look at that, let's scroll down to a prop, and let's look at what some of the settings are for that. You take a look at it, it's red. The line type is phantom, and it has a line weight of 0.25. Now that line weight doesn't really matter that much, because what we're going to do is we're going to create a polyline out of all the property lines and arcs, and then we're going to go ahead and give it a width which is going to make it look quite wide. So when it is presented on the sheet, it stands out the way that it should. So let's go ahead and let's make a prop our current layer. Let's go ahead and close that up. We can double check that right in here. And looking at your markups and your red lines, let's go ahead and start where we're determining our POB, or point of beginning, is going to be. Now, if you recall from some of the problems that we had done regarding bearings and site plans, that we need to be in what we call relative coordinates from the last place that we drew, as opposed to absolute coordinates. So let's go ahead and let's begin with a line. And I'm just going to start anywhere right in here. And before I left click again for the next point, I'm going to go Shift at. So if what we take a look at is what we're going to do is, if you could see the command bar down here, okay, it starts with the at command. So the first thing we're going to do is give a distance, which is 112.93, and we need to give it the feet because our units are still in inches. Then we're going to do the greater than less than signal in there, and now we're going to give it the bearings. So we need to give it the full bearings, starting with a direction. Let's say in this case it's south and ending with W for west, so it's going to be S34D, and it doesn't have to be capitalized. And then we're going to do, it's 34D is 34 degrees, and then we have 09 minutes, then 22 seconds west, and we hit enter, and we have our first line drawn into there. Now, another way to do this and do it relatively easily so you can actually see it is, before I click for the next one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to turn dynamic input on. So that the next time that we put our second spot and I do Shift at, we should be able to see it. Let's go ahead and do this time. I'm going to go ahead and start from this point, and there we go. So I'm going to do Shift at, and there we go. So I've got the at symbol right there next to my dynamic input. I'm going to give it a distance at this point, which is 134.92 feet. I'm going to hit the tab key so we get over to, we've got our distance, now we need our direction. And I'm going to just type in this case, it's going to be S88D, 4 degrees, 6 minutes, 14 seconds east. Now this is a modification from the survey in the book because we needed to make a correction. Once I finish up with the bearing or the direction, I hit enter, and we've got our second line of our survey. Then I'm going to do the same thing now. I'm going to do Shift at. I'm going to give it a distance. This one is 95 feet. Hit the tab key to go over, and I'm going to go north 1 degree, 29 minutes, 48 seconds east. Click that once, and then we're going to finish our last line, and then we're going to do an arc. So I'm going to do Shift at. In this case it's 66.90 feet. Hit the tab key. North 88 degrees, 6 minutes, 14 seconds, this time west. And now we're left with an arc that we need to do right in here. So the next thing I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to take a look at, what we've changed is the radius to 50 feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just draw a circle with a radius of 50 feet from this point, and where those two circles intersect, I'm going to choose that point as the center of the third radius that I'm going to do at 50 feet. So let's go ahead and go to radius here. I'm going to make sure I am at the end point. I'm going to do 50 feet. Do the second radius. Make sure I'm on an end point. 50 feet. and the intersection point is going to be right here. This time I'm going to zoom in and make sure that I get the intersection point 50 feet. That looks good. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we can trim this out. Enter. Use those as the cutting edge, and that looks great. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and delete those. And at this point I'm almost ready to turn and change the direction of my north arrow. But the first thing I want to do is I'm going to do a reference north arrow, and I'm just going to go ahead and draw a line straight up and down with a makeshift arrowhead right into there. I'm going to turn off dynamic input because it really makes my computer lag. And I'm going to go ahead and now rotate my property. I'm going to start by rotating it 180 degrees, and also include the north arrow. So the north arrow is pointing straight down. This is one of the property lines in here, and according to what we're going to be doing with our setbacks, and you take a look at the markups for this, I'm going to have a 15-foot side setback, 25-foot front setback, 15 side, and 25 back. So what I can do at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start offsetting my front. It's going to be at 25, and I'm going to also do this arc portion. The back is at 25. I'm going to offset and change it to 15 feet. Both of these side setbacks at 15 feet. Now I'm going to go ahead and trim. And get rid of any excess lines in here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put these in its proper layer, which there should be an A setback layer. So I'm going to go here, go to A setback. Let's see if we have that somewhere. And if I don't, I will have to reset it up. There's a property, a pool. Okay, so after reviewing my available layers, or the layers that are on here, I cannot find a setback. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create one. So I'm just going to actually begin at any point in here and start a new layer, call it A-STBK. I'm going to change the color. Let's go ahead and let's use a yellow color. Line type, I'm going to change that to hidden 2. And let's go ahead and change the line weight to 0.15. Let's go ahead and close that out. And now let's go ahead and highlight these. And let's take a look at what we have in here in terms of a setback. So there's my setback, and that looks great. All right, so at this point, I can either turn my grid on or off. That's all a personal preference. I'm going to go ahead and save the drawing at this point. And if you notice what we've been doing, we've been drawing basically two-dimensional objects in here. These are all lines that really don't exist in real life. These are just restrictions and parameters that if you were looking at the Earth, you may not be able to tell the property line where it starts or where it ends. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and then relocate our property to where our residence or our house is going to be. And for that, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and bring in as an XREF and only as an overlay the main level, and we're going to bring it down to the level that it would sit in reference to the site itself. And by that, what I mean is that I'm going to go ahead and go to the Insert tab here, go to Attach, go to the main drawing right in here and do Open. I'm going to click on Overlay, and what I'm going to do in here, all of these other parameters or all these other settings are as we want, but I'm going to go ahead and here I'm going to set this the distance down that this would be in reference to the site. So I'm going to set this at minus 1 foot 2. And actually I'm going to set it up at positive 1 foot 2. So that it sits the right distance above the plane. So let's see, once that comes in, there it is right here, and let's do a little study and see if that's how it came in. Because what I want this to do is I want it to come in about 1 foot 2 above. I'm going to go ahead and change this to conceptual. And our garage should only be about 2 inches above it. So if we take a look at what our condition here, and that looks pretty good. So let's go to our top view again. I'm going to go ahead and get out of conceptual and go back to 2D wireframe. So if I had placed this house without resetting the Z coordinate, I'm always going to check and make sure that that is correct. This level of the main construct that we brought in would automatically go down to the same 0, 0 as our site. And we know from our project settings right here that my main level, which we're using as our benchmark, that my site, which is on level 2, should be 1 foot 2 inches below it. So as I draw this, that should end up being now 1 foot 2 in here below that. So let's go ahead and let's move this property to where I wanted to sit right here near my main level. Now if you notice, this is not a vertical property line right in here. Again, the bearings showed that it was 1 degree off, and some minutes and seconds off of it. But what I want to do is I want to rotate the property so that this does become vertical. And what we're going to do is we're going to align my setback, our setback, right vertically along this sidewall of the house. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to go ahead and rotate this just slightly more so that this line becomes vertical. Now of course I'm going to go ahead also and rotate the north arrow so that we get an accurate direction of where north would be. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the rotate command, select both of those, and I'm going to go ahead and pick a base point right in here. This time what I'm going to do, I'm going to go down to reference, and it's asking for what the reference angle is. Well, the reference angle is the existing angle that you have, and then the new angle that you want, and this I'm going to put my ortho on, is my vertical angle, and you can see that it's shown there as that yellow dashed line. So I'm going to rotate, make sure that the north arrow is included with it, and now what I've done is I've rotated my property line, and I know in which direction north is going to go. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and move all of this. I'm going to pick a spot, let's say this back spot right here, and I'm going to bring it to the house and put it right there at that corner. So I've got the alignment that I want here along that vertical line right here, but in the back, if you take a look, if this is our setback line right in here, our property is into the setback, so we have to make some corrections on there. The other thing I want to do is I want to make sure that my XREF was brought in on a prop, so I'm going to go ahead and change that, and I'm going to go ahead and change that to 0 layer, and we get sort of a better understanding of what the layers were. So what I need to do is I need to go ahead and move the property line and the setbacks so that my house falls within it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw a vertical line from here down. I'm going to go back to layer 0. I'm going to turn that into my current layer. I'm going to be erasing anything that I draw on that. I'm going to draw it from here straight down. Now once again, rather than moving my main level down from this point to this intersection point, I'm going to move my setback lines, I'm going to move my property lines, and I'm going to move my north arrow up so that I'm pushing the house as far forward. Again, that's a figure of speech because I'm actually moving the property up so that I'm giving myself as much backyard as I possibly can. I'm just going to go to the move command. I'm going to highlight everything, make sure that I get these arcs down here also. Make sure you get all the property lines, all the arcs. You don't want to leave any of that behind. That looks good. And I'm going to go ahead, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this point from there up to there. I'm going to go ahead and remove that line, and I'm just going to go ahead and change this one, which I missed previously, and I'm going to change that one to a setback also. Alright, so if we take a look at this, what I've done is I've now located my house, and every element of the house that is important that has to be within the setbacks is now located within the setbacks. This is the closest point that is right on the setback, as well as this wall located right on the setback. Now later on we're going to go ahead and do what we call window wells here, but they can actually go into the property line. So if we were to go back and let's take a look again at our drawings on what we need to do in here. Let's take a look and let's begin to lay out our driveways, our street, and if you look at this plan right in here of the plot plan, there's also a sidewalk which is just off of our property. So what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just start drawing some lines that represent the sidewalk, etc. And let's go ahead and let's pull this back out of the way so that we can begin to modify that. So what we can take a look at is see if we have any layers available that would already have that. So let's go ahead and let's see what we've got available. They would not be in the XREF, they should be in the layers that we brought in. So I'm just going to say all non-XREF layers. And let's take a look and see what we've got. So we may have one that's a road, that's perfect. We may have one also that is a slab or a walk. I don't think we have that one. Slab, setback, slab edge, shelf. So let's go ahead and let's start with the A road, and we've got an A road center that we can use. Let's go ahead and continue looking through this and see what if we have anything in terms of the sidewalk. Alright, so let's begin with the road work and the sidewalk. If you take a look at the numbers that they've given us, they're telling us that the center line of the road is about 25 feet from our front property line. What that represents is that it is probably a 50-foot right-of-way, which means that from the center of the road, 25 feet each side will give you a 50-foot right-of-way before you get into people's property lines. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and draw just an extension line on this side, and I'm going to go ahead and draw a line from the center here, and just let's go off into this direction in here like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw a line from here to the end of the property line. I'm going to go ahead and offset that forward. So I'm going to go ahead now also and draw an arc, which is going to be from here to the midpoint of the arc, and then to the end of the arc right there. And at this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and extend it to that line that I marked right into there. I'm going to go ahead and extend this side to that point there. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to offset the distance that we have decided that it's going to be. So it's going to be a 48-inch walk based on the numbers. That's an error in the book. And I'm going to go ahead and do that there also. I'm going to go ahead and extend this down just a little bit more. Alright, now I'm going to leave those in because I'm going to continue to use some of these lines for doing the road and the side of the road, etc. So let's go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and offset this 25 feet. And that represents the center of the road. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. Let's take a look at our layers, and there should be a road center right there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and now it's changed it to the right layer. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we are going to let's see what we can do. So from the center, we're going to make the assumption that the edge of the street, we're going to go with about a 22-foot wide street. So I'm going to offset that center line of the road 11 feet in each direction. And that's going to represent my road. And I'm going to change those two layers, or those two lines, to a road. So let's click on that, and let's see, we've got our A road located right under there. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim. Now this isn't exactly how it is, and what I'm going to try to do in here, since we are going to be 3D modeling a lot of this is going to serve dual purposes. So all of these lines that we're drawing right now are going to serve a purpose in terms of the 3D model, but they're also going to serve a purpose in terms of our 2D deliverables or documentation. So I'm going to go ahead and move my north arrow a little bit out of the way into here. And I've got a closed polyline in here. I'm going to go ahead and change this and change this to the proper layer. Let's put that as a road. See if I can find that. And now what I need to do is to create a closed polyline for it. The same thing with the sidewalk. Now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with driveways and so on, but let's start with these two elements. So right now I do not have anything for the sidewalk, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new layer. And I can do that probably almost anywhere. Just going to give it pretty much the same characteristics as the road. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer underneath that one. I'm going to call it A dash, we can call it walk. And I'm going to give it another gray tone in here. This time I'm going to do a lighter gray. To there. Continuous is fine, and 0.15 is fine also. So let's close that out. And let's go ahead and highlight all of the elements that we want to be on that layer. And let's go in here. We're going to go to a walk. There it is, and we've changed that to those layers. Now go ahead and let's take a look at this in isometric. And as of now, we've been drawing two-dimensional sketching right on the drawing plane here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a polyline edit command, and I'm going to select all of these elements here, enter. I'm going to now join. I'm going to join all of the elements, and hopefully it's going to come out okay. Usually when you're joining curves to straight lines and so on, sometimes they will not extrude correctly. Now I had already opened up the solids tab. I'm going to hit the extrude. I'm going to select. Now you can tell right now that it did not create a closed polyline. So what I'm going to do is make my life easier. I'm going to go ahead and isolate everything in here. And I'm going to isolate the object. And I'm going to see what's going on with this object. So I'm going to zoom in. And these edges look pretty good, but usually what I end up doing is I end up filleting these lines to make sure they're working. So there's part of the problem right in there. That is definitely not a clean connection at that point. Most of the problems that we end up having end up being at junction points like this. If it had not been done correctly in the site plan, this actually looks pretty good, but even then it's not grabbing. I'm going to go ahead and take that arc, grab it from here by the grip. I'm going to grab it by the grip and I'm going to drag it. Let's zoom out a little bit. And let's see if I've got my, let's take that off. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the end of the arc portion, grab it by the grip, and I'm going to make sure I take it to the end point of the straight line. By doing that, I am almost ensuring that those are going to be meeting at that end point. I'm going to work my way around, make sure that these 2 points are clean. Those 2 look good. But I'm going to play it safe, and I'm going to do the same thing with the end of this arc. Grab it by the grip, and then bring it to the end point of the straight line portion, right in there. So let's go ahead and let's give this another shot. So I'm going to go back to my P-edit command, my polyline edit, select one, and now it says join. I'm going to go ahead and join. You notice some of them did join, so I'm going to click on that one, that, hit enter, and let's see if everything joined up. That part looks good. Now let's go ahead and let's extrude. Now the distance that we're going to be extruding is, I'm going to go ahead and go in a vertical direction this way, and that looks like it's extruding okay, but I'm only going to do 2 inches. And the reason I'm doing the 2 inches is because our drawing plane here is at -1 foot 2. And remember, the top of our garage and the top of our walkway, our front porch, was at -1 foot. So the differential between those is only 2 inches. So what this has done is it's given us that point to where I'm going to end object isolation. And this point right here, where the garage door bottom is now going to be lining up perfectly with my top of the sidewalk. So when I do my walkways or when I do my driveway, it's going to go at the exact elevation that we want. Now most sites would have contours, and we can get into more advanced site modeling for that, but for this is a good start in terms, we're going to assume that we have a perfectly flat piece of property and that we don't have to worry about sloping our driveways for drainage, etc. So we're going to be dealing with flat surfaces. So I'm going to go ahead and try to see if I can fix this part right in here. Let's go ahead and fillet it before we even try to extrude it. Let's go ahead and fillet this one too. And I'm going to do one more here. I'm going to do the same procedure. I'm going to take my arc by its grip at the end and go to the end point of the line. That seems to work out fine. This one is obviously off. Grab it by its grip. Go to the end point of the line. Let's look at this down in here. We're not going to worry about the center line. So I'm going to go back to Polyline Edit, P-Edit. Select one of them. It's asking me, do you want to turn it into one? The answer is yes. Now I'm going to go to Join. And I'm going to join those. And that one in there. Hit Enter. Let's see if it worked. Looks like it did. Let's go ahead and go to Extrude, and we're going to hit 2 right into there. So now if I went to from 2D wireframe to conceptual, you can see that these are solid masses right here. So what we're going to do now is let's see what we've got as far as our model is starting to work. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now remember that this is in there as an overlay, so when I look at my view in my Project Navigator, everything is being done through the Project Navigator. I'm going to go to the view, I'm going to click on the model, and it's going to give me a notification here. Reference file has changed and might need reload modified XREF. This should now include my driveways. So let's see what we've got. There There we go. A little bit of while. And let's go ahead and rotate this and see what that looks like. Now we're still taking a look at this entire project in parallel projection. And we do not have our site where our earth would be laid out yet. Let's go ahead and let's go here. And this little arrow right behind, underneath our view cube, let's click on that and let's go change from parallel to perspective. So I could click it right into there. And it gives me a better representation of what our eye would see. Now, of course, I could bring this down to a certain level about where we would be walking, but I wouldn't see any of this basement. I would have the earth covering all of that, and the bottom and the top of the earth would be lined up with the bottom of this sidewalk. So now if we did our driveway would hit right up against there. So let's take a look at how we can do that. I'm going to go back to my site right here. I'm going to switch away from my conceptual back to 2D wireframe. And I'm going to go to my top view. Now, as I mentioned before, these property lines and our setback lines are not actual construction. They are elements which are developed and you would not be able to see them out. So what we're going to do is, even though this is exactly what we want to see for our construction documentation, for our 3D model what we want to do is set up a earth slab that is going to then represent the earth when we do our model. We'll attach a material for it, whether it's grass or something else. And what we're going to do is go ahead and let's create a layer. Let's see if there is a layer already for a earth. Let's see. Doesn't look like we have anything on there. Let's go ahead and let's go down toward the landscape. Nothing there. So let's go ahead and let's create a new layer. We could call it, possibly we could have called it soil or anything like that, but let's go ahead and let's create a new layer and let's call it A-earth. So we can start with new layer right in here, A-EAR. Let's call it ERTH for earth. Okay, let's change the color from white and let's just do some let's try a darker green, something that'll not be too bright. You could even do this down in here. That's probably okay. Let's try that one. So now we're going to do okay. And the line weight, let's go ahead and let's just change that to 0.15. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it our current layer right there. Let's close that off. There's our A-earth layer. And what I usually do is I create a very large area right in here. And the reason I do that is because it's always adjustable, but what we do when we set something up about this size is we then create the horizon line a little bit further away so that the actual horizon line is going to help match up. So let's go ahead and let's go to our isometric view. We're going to go to solids. We're going to extrude this one, and I'm going to bring it down, and I'm just going to bring it down about maybe 9 or 10 feet. Actually, you can almost visualize this. You don't have to be too accurate with it. Again, we're only using it as a massing earth for our rendering. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And let's see what we end up with on our model. So I'm going to go to the model. There's our notification. And what we should get is once this finishes loading, we'll be able to see a representation of our Earth right there. And there it is. So I'm going to 3D orbit down in here, and that looks actually pretty good. So what we can begin to do now is, if you take a look right here, we've got a 2-inch lip in there that we're going to close off by creating our driveways, our walkway along the side. We're going to do one perspective of this, and we're probably going to do it from an angle somewhere around in here. So we're not going to bother doing 3D pool deck in the back, but we are still going to have to draw it for the sake of our 2D documentation for our site plan. So let's go ahead and let's see what we can make this look like. I think what we can do in here, let's go ahead and let's change this to realistic. Now we have an attached material, so it may not be that difficult. And I'm going to show you also how you can change the visual style on how this is represented. So if we were to zoom in a little bit, you can see the brick, you can see some of the materials that are already indicated in there. But I don't like the way that we cannot see edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to the View tab. Right in here under Visual Styles, I'm going to click right down in here, which is our Manager, Visual Style Manager. I'm going to go ahead and click on the realistic icon right in here, and I'm going to change some of the settings right here. So under Edge Settings, I'm going to go ahead, right now it says for Show, it says None. I'm going to go ahead and change that to Isolines. And then for the color, it says By Entity. I'm going to go ahead and change that. I'm going to select the color. And I'm just going to go ahead with the dark color right into there. Do OK. And let's see what that looks like now. I like that a lot better where I can see the edges onto there. That looks good. Once we stop, we get a pretty nice representation on what we're going to do in here. So what we're going to do is also take a look at why these are those dark colors into there. So let's go ahead and let's go back to our site right here, and let's see what's going on with this. So let's take a look at this. And if we take a look at it, for some reason when it was extruded, we must have been on layer 0. So it changed it from the A road layer to layer 0. So let's go ahead and change this back to A road. And let's change this one. It's also on 0. Let's change that to a walk, I think is what we created. A walk. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to take a look at the model one more time. And it should give me a notification, and these should change from black to some other color once that reloads. So let's take a look. Let's give it a second. And there we go. So let's go ahead and there we go. Now it's already in perspective. And later on what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a camera for that. So let's go back to our site. And let's begin to create our walkways. And I'm not going to go ahead and do the pool deck area because that's all going to be 2D line work, but I am going to go ahead and create a walkway that is going to wrap around part of the distance. I do need to take into account obviously where our window wells are located, so I'll be adding that, but I'm going to be focusing right now first on what we're going to do with the driveway. So I'm going to see if we have a layer for a road. Let's see some of the layers that we have available. So we have alright, so as we scroll up and down through here, we've got a layer called A Drive. We're going to go ahead and make that our current layer. And let's go ahead and begin to lay out a driveway. Now, we're going to make sure that our Z is set. Again, I always do that. And the way that I usually start this is I'm going to go ahead and draw a line from this point. Put my ortho on. And I'm going to do one over in here. Now, usually I don't like to start the driveways directly where the garage door is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move this. I can also use offset or copy. And I'm going to move it over about 6 inches over. And I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Now this is no different than our sidewalk or our road. We have to make sure that we create a closed polyline, so we need to close off at that point. Now I'm going to go ahead and from here, I'm going to use maybe this edge point right in here. And I'm going to check what my distance was here. So let's go ahead and let's figure out our distance here, because I want this to be consistent throughout. So it says it's 20 foot 6 and 7/16. So I'm going to offset this 20 foot 6 and 7/16. Let's go ahead and put that in the proper format. Now, we should really be rounding this off, but I'm going to go ahead and draw that to there, like that. And from here, I'm just going to go ahead and draw an angle in there. And I'm going to offset this the same distance in here. So the driveway right now, if we take a look at it, avoids the neighbor's property in here and goes straight into here. Now the first thing that we should do is we should really get a radius in here, because the car doesn't take these sharp edges the way it does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a fillet with a radius located right in here. So I'm going to do a fillet. I'm going to go down to radius, and in this case I'm going to do 20 feet. And let's see how that looks. So I'm going to do that from there to there. Actually, that looks pretty good. And I'm going to offset this again and stick to the 20 foot 6 and 7/16 and offset that to that point right there. I'm going to go ahead and trim. Okay, and this one looks like it trimmed out also. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and now do a radius here from that one. So I'm going to use the fillet command. Fillet with a radius, and I'm going to stick to the 20 foot radius, and I'm going to do this one. That looks like a nice smooth curve. Let's get rid of this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset and make sure I'm still set to 20 foot 6 and 7/16. Your numbers may be a little bit different. And I'm going to go ahead and use this as a cutting edge. Now notice that one does not want to cut. So let's go ahead and we're going to do some slight adjustments. I'm going to draw a line from the end point here and use that to trim. And let's get rid of the excess lines that we don't need. Now, one thing that we definitely want to do is we need to take care of these situations right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw a line in here. And the reason we're doing this, by the way, I'm going to do the other one down here. I'm going to draw a line from there. I'm going to try to find the end of the line right there. Okay. I'm going to regen to get my curves again. And I'm going to go ahead and draw just an arc for there. I'm going to do the same thing over in here. I'll go ahead and pull this from there to that point there. And I'm going to draw an arc. I'm going to go ahead and isolate that layer. And I'm going to trim all that out. Go ahead and I get rid of that. Didn't need that. Definitely need to trim this part out. And I'm going to finish off this one down here with a straight line. Make sure it goes to the end point. I'm going to unisolate the layer. And the reason I've done that is because this sidewalk is what we would call a public right-of-way. And whatever material you have on your driveway, at least in this condition, is not going to be allowed to go over the sidewalk. You know, let's say you have cobblestone or something with a very rough surface, and someone walking along the sidewalk who's handicapped or blind then encounters a change in materials, and they unfortunately might have an accident. So let's go ahead, and that's part of the design features that we're going to do. Now what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and extrude each one of these and see how that works. So let's go ahead and isolate the layer again, and let's create a closed polyline of the first area in here, and let's see if we can actually get that to work. So we're going to do join, hit enter, and it looks like it worked out pretty good, but let's take a look. Now I'm going to go to solids, I'm going to do extrude, select it, and extrude up, and it works. So we're going to do that to 2 inches again. Now in reality, you know that the pavers would be more than 2 inches in terms of their depth, but for this, since this is exactly where it stops on the earth or on the soil, we can go ahead and leave it at that. This one should be easy. So let's go ahead and make a polyline edit of this area right here. That says, do you want to turn it into one? Yes. And then we're going to join. You could use the join command for this too if you really wanted to. Let's go ahead and let's see what happens if we extrude. Now in this case, okay, we got a couple of slight curves in there. Let's go ahead and do 2, and there we go. Let's go ahead and unisolate this layer and save the drawing. Let's go back to our model. We should get a notification where some of our drawings have changed. So let's go ahead and click on that. Let's give it a second, and we should have our driveway shown there, and there it is. Alright, so let's go ahead and 3D orbit, and let's see how this looks and how that might look when we get close enough to be able to see this drawing. Let's go ahead and let's escape out of that, and that's beginning to look pretty good. One of the things we're going to do later on, we're going to be using this to create a rendering for our client. So what we want to make sure is that we get it as accurate as possible. Remember, this is like a selling point. It's kind of important. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and continue with our walkways and some of our driveways. And we're going to be pretty simple with that. And as I mentioned previously, we're not going to, even though we're going to be designing the pool deck in the back, I'm not going to show it in the video, but once we lay out the pool deck, that will help us with our construction document phase. So let's go ahead and let's see what we can do in terms of creating a walkway, which is going to abut into our area right here. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to make it a relatively simple situation. So I'm going to do a polyline, and I'm going to go ahead and do a polyline, let's say from here. I'm going to go across this way, let's say 5 feet. Go down here. Let's go 10 feet. And I'm going to cut across here. I'm also going to do another one right here. This time I'm going to do 15 feet. And go right to there. So what I want to do is I want this to tie right into this driveway, and I'm going to be using the same material. So I'm going to show you guys what you can do when you have two solids connected together. So let's go ahead and let's isolate the layer again. It makes it easier to work with. And let's go ahead and let's go to our 3D view like that. So what I'm trying to do is to avoid having to make this arc and connection working in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and p-edit. I'm going to turn that one. I'm going to go down to join. That was already a polyline. And I'm going to join the polyline I had selected initially. Hit enter, and I'm ready to extrude this piece right here. So I'm going to go to solids, extrude, select it, and go up 2. Now this is in the same plane right in here, and what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I am going to merge these two solids together. So under the solids tab, under the solids editing, what you get right in here is you get one that is called subtract, you get this one which is intersection, but the one on the top is called union. So I'm going to do union, I'm going to select this one, I'm going to select this one, I'm going to enter, and what we now have is we have those two are tied in together perfectly. So let's go ahead and let's undo. Let's unisolate that layer. Let's go save that. And if we go now to conceptual, you can take a look at what we're getting done right here. And that's looking pretty good. Again, your design should be unique, so you guys do it and arrange it the way that you want. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a walkway this way around to the back. I'm going to let it turn this way before I draw the pool. I'm not going to carry it too much further beyond that point. And I'm going to also have part of it go right in here and abut into this doorway right there. So let's go ahead and let's go to the top view. I'm going to switch from conceptual. I'm going to go back to 2D wireframe. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, this time I'm just going to draw a line from here to here, and I'm going to go ahead and move it out. I'm going to move it out about, let's say 30 inches. And I'm not going to make this walk as wide as the other one in the front. I'm just going to make it about 4 feet, which is still a substantial. Let's go ahead and let's delete that. Let's offset it just 3 feet. And I'm going to do the same thing in here. I'm going to draw a line from, let's say, somewhere here. I'm going to offset that 3 feet. I'm going to tie that up right here. And I'm going to fill it. Fill it with a radius of 0. Change it back to 0, and now I should be able to fill it. Radius 0. Select the two objects. Now why is it not letting me? Let's see what's going on. Repeat, fill it. Alright, so let's see what's going on here. Usually when something like that happens, it means that the lines are not coplanar. So if you take a look at what happened here, one of my lines, and probably more than one, is in the wrong plane. So what I need to do is I need to make sure, check out my properties and find out where the start Z is on this. That one seems correct, but these two don't look like they are correct. So let's take a look at where we've got that. Start Z is 2. Let's go ahead and change that to 0. So these are some things that you have to be careful with. So let's go ahead and check these two right in here. And those are at 0. So now if I try my fillet command and I fillet these two, let's see why that is not. This may also be slightly off. Well, let's check these also. 0 and Z. Okay, so we've got to make sure both our start and is correct. Those two are. So let's try the fillet command one more time. And the third time is the charm. Okay, I'm going to go back to top view. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a rectangle from there to about there. I'm going to make sure that is still on. And And I'm going to go ahead and offset this a little bit more in the back, again because we have a window well located in there. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line from here. And this one I'm going to go ahead and move maybe 4 feet back. Let's do 4 feet. I'm going to go ahead and offset this 3 feet. Now I expect you to be a little bit more creative, and if you still want to do that whole pool deck area in 3D, I can show you how to do that. So let's go ahead and let's do that. I'm going to go to my ISO command, and let's isolate the layer, and let's make a polyline out of this. Okay, we've got a polyline in here, so let's go ahead and make a p-edit of this part. Yes, we want to turn it into one, and let's join all the pieces that we want to join into there. Hit enter, highlight it to make sure it grabbed everything, and let's go ahead, solids, extrude, and we're going to go up 2 inches to there, and we're going to do the same thing for this piece right in here. We're going to go up 2, and now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to join these solids. So I want to show you something that if you were to draw a polyline, and let's go ahead and let's go to the polyline command right here. And I just want to show you this as a demonstration, and we were to do something like this, and it doesn't close, even if it's something that you can hardly tell. And you try to extrude this. If you click extrude, you hit enter. If you extrude up and you see something like this, like a wire fence, what you're really doing is you are not creating a solid. And I can demonstrate that if you take a look at the conceptual. Notice how these are solids while this is merely a shell. So really what you've done is you created a surface. So you got to make sure that it's a closed, clean polyline. So I'm going to go ahead and get back out of this. I'm going to delete this. And let's go ahead and join all these solids right now. So solids, join. We're going to join that, that, and that. Hit enter. And that looks like that worked beautifully. Let's go ahead and unisolate this layer. I'm going to save it. Go back to top view. I think that looks great. Let's just leave it the way it is right now. I'm going to go ahead and I'll design a pool deck area for this before we start our next video, and I want you to do basically the same thing, is do a simple pool and pool deck area in the back. Be a little bit creative. We're also going to be adding landscaping and so on. Let's take a look at our model one more time. We should get our notification here with some additional items. And there we go. Let's switch this back to parallel. Let's switch to our isometric view. I'm going to do a 3D orbit. That looks pretty good. And in our next video, we're going to go ahead and add some of the items I had mentioned previously. We're going to add our fireplace in here. We're going to add some trim work. We're also going to be adding a fascia, maybe even some gutter work. But for now, let's go ahead and do one last look by switching this to our perspective view. And let's go ahead and get down to about where our horizon line might be. Escape out of that. A little bit too close there, but actually that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and 3D orbit this way, and I'm beginning to explore what might be a good angle to show this house at. So Once we add materials and so on, it's going to look a lot better. But it's already looking like it's shaping up. So let's see how we can dress this up and begin to modify this a little bit more in our next video.